And that's when I really emotionally started questioning, what did I just do to my kids? To see him start to emotionally fall apart a little bit when he was so strong before, it really made us stop and realize we just really changed these kids' lives. It almost makes me emotional to think about it because, a lot of times you jump into it and you don't even think of these things that are going to arise.
Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with Thomas Miller. Are you tired of your tweens, teens, and young adults' negative behaviors and poor choices holding you emotionally hostage, controlling your family, and ruling your life? If you answered yes, then you are in the right place. This podcast is a community for courageous parents just like you who come here to gain effective tools, skills, and take action so they can change their tween, teen, or young adult's life and improve their family's future. Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with your host, Thomas Miller. So excited to have with me an awesome, amazing guest named Joy McAdams, who is going to dive into a super important topic with us today called the Unwritten Rules of When Families Become Blended. So welcome, Joy, to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast.
Oh, it's so exciting to be here, and it's definitely something that's so close to my heart, and I am excited to share a lot of the things that we learned the hard way, so hopefully you can avoid that.
Yeah, and this is going to be a two-part interview because there's so much goodies that we're going to get into, and I just want to quickly help everyone know who Joy is. If you have a LinkedIn account, you know probably who Joy is, unless you live under a rock and don't have a LinkedIn account. But I'm going to give a quick overview of who Joy is. She is an amazing professional that helps healthcare providers thrive, not just survive. She helps practices put together specialized marketing and business strategies that bring them back to life and produce growth. She has worked closely with physicians, and helped them grow their passion for free prescription assistance. And she also is an iron person, and she's going to speak to, how many times she has competed. She loves to swim, bike, and run. She is so inspiring and motivating, and she keeps me doing something every Friday because she always has a Friday fitness challenge. She's also a TEDx speaker. She recently launched a business providing health training camps to help professionals reach the highest level of their performance through leaning into physical challenges. She is just a super inspiring person overall, and someone that thankfully we have gotten contact with over the years, and it's just been lovely to see her grow. And I think iron sharpens iron, and so she's pushed me and I've pushed her, and it's just such an honor to have you today.
Well, it's great to be here, and I'm not the one out there trying to hang with these D1 soccer players, so there's big kudos to you as well.
Thank you. Did I miss anything, by the way, in your bio? Anything that you want to shout out?
I think you got it. I think people are leaving maybe with a little understanding of what drew me to endurance sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot going on.
If I wasn't clear enough too, I think what's really cool, which is not obviously the topic of today, but having been in the mental health space, I know you also help docs, right, enter into the concierge medicine approach so they can obviously be growing toward value rather than volume, and also have probably the joy and or the original impetus for why they became a doctor back. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, anything we can do to help the healthcare system, because it is very broken, and we're just there to, help those providers thrive for sure.
Yeah. Which is not only for the provider, but also, of course, for the patient, right?
Patients,
So that the patients can get the care they deserve and not just be a number, but actually be, a person that the doctor really can track and know all the trends of their health journey, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's kind of go back and, this idea of blended families, we were talking before we jumped on here that it's not a novel thing. I mean, it's not like it's some new taboo, weird, funky thing, yet it's not talked about that much. And there's not that much information out there. There's not that many good handbooks or guidebooks. And so, like with so many things with parenting, you're kind of learning on the job, right? You're learning as you're going. And so what was kind of the beginning? I mean, what was the first like foray, and was it a trial by fire, when you and your partner began, all right, to have to make sense of this coupling, if you will, of two different nations and pulling together two different cultures? So speak to that, please.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? Where to begin? It's funny, here we are no, 14 years down the road now. And we still look at each other, and as we look back, we say, "What were we thinking?" We were mid-30s when we blended a family. I had a 3, 5, and 7-year-old, right?
Hmm.
So as if I already wasn't overwhelmed enough,
Sure.
married him, and he had a 10 and 14-year-old. So, coming from your profession, you understand the stages of those kids' lives and combining preteen, early teen with pretty much toddler. I mean, that's just like a recipe for
With
disaster.
totally. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, there's so many different needs there, right? There's so many different, oh my God, cognitive capabilities, emotional capabilities, as you said, developmental milestones and phases. And wow. So what was like the first, like, holy crap, this is pretty freaking hard, or going to be really hard? What was the first, like, this is real deal?
Oh man, there's so many things. First of all, and we'll get into this a little bit more in detail, but first of all, you have exes on both sides, right? So you have kids going to other houses, and just the trying to get them especially the younger ones. The 2 older ones had already kind of adjusted to it, but the divorce and this going back and forth was newer to the younger ones, and, I mean, we were still doing blankie swaps, for the little ones, and if the blankie didn't make it in the basket, we were driving over in there in the middle of the night to get the blankie. I mean, like, so many things that you were trying to do to keep them emotionally kinda stable, and then having the youngest as a little girl, I mean, her worst nightmare was going to school every day coming from her dad's with her hair not done, or like looking like a disaster, or
Totally.
not matching clothes. I mean, like little things like that that you don't even think of. And then also the birth orders, right? So I think my biggest eye opener was my oldest, who was 7 at the time, was very confident, very outgoing, very just a leader. And then when we got married, all of a sudden, it never hit me. His birth order just got totally smashed.
Sure.
And now these older ones had somebody to pick on, and they were thrilled, especially the younger one. He started jumping into a lot of comparing. He always had a little bit of a stutter, but his stutter got really bad due to the stress. And that's when I really emotionally started questioning, what did I just do to my kids? To see him start to emotionally fall apart a little bit when he was so strong before, it really made us stop and realize we just really changed these kids' lives. It almost makes me emotional to think about it because, a lot of times you jump into it and you don't even think of these things that are going to arise. And
Hmm.
then the youngest now goes from being the youngest of 3 to be the youngest of 5. And she's really now calling for attention, acting out because now she's really feeling not seen, right? She got moved from the second row of the car to a 3-row car, and now
Yeah.
she's way in the back. And these
Major demotion. Not an
major
upgrade, not an upgrade. Yeah, she went from business class to coach.
even just the sleeping patterns too. When you still have younger kids, you can still get them in bed at a decent hour, but when you have older kids, you are at the later ball games and dragging everybody, and the 3-year-old's getting in bed super late at night where she used to have a nice bedtime at about 8:30. And you know so many things, even just like we were talking before we got on the call. Things like my kids weren't allowed to drink soda, his were. Now we're in the same household. They see these older kids drinking soda, they want soda. How do you explain, or do you take away the soda from the older kids? It's not, it's just so many things like that. I can't even begin to tell you.
Oh my God. I mean, just there's so much there. First off, thank you for being vulnerable and expressing emotionality that is still there. And like you said, you have kind of hindsight, right, is always 2020. And I think it's a beautiful thing that there's emotions still attached to what you asked of your child. And I think what's so hard, which is why, of course, the second peak of the Four Peaks Parents Program is called emotional mastery, because I don't want parents to be parenting based on emotions, but I want them to be able to name, feel, claim those emotions, and then parent from a more unflappable, regulated, higher level, higher functioning place, which is easier, right, said than done. And I have parented from a place of dysregulation as well several times. I'm not always the most regulated, right, Dalai Lama parent. And so for you to feel those feelings, which is a beautiful thing, which is about, it speaks to the depth of your attachment that you have to your children, that now you're like, huh, that I did ask for a big stretch. I did kind of upset the apple cart a little bit. In no way, shape, or form, of course, do I think you or any blended family is creating trauma. I think people use a lot of psychobabble these days that cracks me up, that they don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they're over ascribing words to things that are called adversity and sometimes called a difficult Tuesday. But there is a true tectonic plates moving under the earth for children during just a regular divorce. And I think sometimes what's really nice about what you're saying is that while it is normalized and there are references for kids around divorce, and there are actually some great books for kids and things of that nature, the things you just spoke to are so huge, because each child on some level, depending upon their age, needs to be somewhat egocentric, needs to be somewhat quasi-autistic, if you will, to what's happening on the left or the right of them as they're emerging, particularly going into tweenagehood and then teenagehood, et cetera. And now for your oldest, like you said, to all of a sudden the birth order to be shifted, right? For your daughter to have anticipatory anxiety about her hair not being done right, because dad's using freaking a Flowbee or whatever the hell he's doing over there, this giant ass 1980s banana clip. And you're like, all right, bro, what the hell's going on here? All of that is opportunities, of course, for adversity. And it's up to us to be the shepherds and to be the stewards of this process. But because, as we all are, myself included, stretched and doing our best to be present, right, in multiple areas, it's now a really nice thing that you could reflect back and realize, like, wow, how much was in that.
Right,
It's
right.
hard when you're in it to see it.
Right, right, right. And I reference my younger ones, but then you got to speak to the older ones. They were
Sure.
used to being super independent, being able to go and do, especially think a 14-year-old boy. He's not used to having all this noise and chaos in the house. And that's a big shift for them,
Totally.
in the beginning found him a lot in his room, obviously, because he didn't want to be in the midst of the chaos that was going on in the house.
Yeah.
So, then you, like you said, you have exes and, on each side too. And yeah, that beginning was just a lot of making mistakes, trying to control too many things, maybe trying to overcompensate to tailor to my stepkids, and maybe, not neglecting, but giving preference to the older kids' needs and wants, trying to win them over, trying to
Hmm.
establish relationship with them. But then the younger ones start to feel a little bit left out and start to compare. And so then you're totally stuck between the two of trying to win everybody over and blend. But I'll tell you one of the things that helped for sure. So I'll let you add to that, and then I'll tell you one of the things they found.
What I love, again, and why I'm so happy that you're here, is because, of course, you're telling your story, and I'm glad that as you're pulling up the I don't know if it was tapes. Was it tapes? No, it wasn't tapes. It wasn't. It definitely wasn't 8 tracks. But as you're pulling up maybe the CDs or the
Yeah.
MP3s of this experience, you're actually giving a lot more value to everyone involved in that, because it wasn't just you and your husband, right? Like you said, there's exes, there's this, and it's a transition. And so many families who are on the show have kids that are neurodivergent. And again, that means someone who is on the autistic spectrum, to someone who is dyslexic, to someone who is twice exceptional, which is more about potentially a learning difference, or ADHD, a different non-traditional learner. There's so much that's asked of everyone. And I think about how much there was a lot of decisions that you just spoke to, like you did the 80-20 rule, right? Like 80% of the time, maybe you get, not maybe it wasn't 80-20, but you gave a lot of energy to the new kids because you were trying to earn them and develop some currency. And that's a hard job too. I mean, that's a podcast in and of itself, is just being the step parent. You fart and the kid is like, ready to rip your head off. You've done nothing wrong, or you
Yeah.
cough wrong, or I've worked with so many families where you have a very, could be more militant, if you will, or strict or draconian parent. And then now you have, like you said, a more permissive, loosey-goosey. There's weaknesses in both sides of that and strengths in both sides of that, and trying to figure that out. And that's a lot for a kid to go like, wait a minute, 5 seconds ago I was, in this world, and now it feels like I'm in India, or I was in India, and now it feels like I'm living in Canada. What's going on here? But there's a lot of nuance, a lot of decision making, and you survived and they survived, and I would argue thrived as well. And I think the piece too around like really gargling or trying to gargle each kid's world is beautiful, but you're also going to like lose your mind, right? I'm sure there was moments where you tried to really pay respect, if you will, to each child's developmental needs, learning needs, personalities. They're an introvert, they're an extrovert, but you couldn't turn your house into 5 mini nations, right? As much as
Right.
we try. And I always say to parents who are part of the program where I'm coaching, we're going to be in the black in some areas and we're going to be in the red in some areas. And it's up to us to zoom in and audit, when are we in the red and how do we zoom in and get more present and proximal, and then shift that right toward putting those deposits in. So we're never, ever in the black across all domains.
Right. 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 So I'll tell you one of the things that, and I don't know if purposely we did this or we just sometimes you end up doing something successful without realizing it, and you look back now and then you can say, wow, this was instrumental in bonding the kids. I love to travel anyway, but we really, really put a lot of investment into doing trips with the kids. So spring break, fall break, summer break. And it was something about taking the kids on the trip that was magical in bonding them. Okay, it was chaotic for my husband and
Mm-hmm.
I, total chaos. We probably fought way more than we should on these trips. But the kids somehow, I think it's because it removed them from all the external environments here. So they weren't around, their other parents, the exes, right? They weren't around their friends. They were in a new environment. Because one of the things too was we moved into my house. So even the switching of the bedrooms, my kids moved bedrooms to accommodate the newer ones. Even that, maybe we should have moved into a totally different house. I don't know, looking back, that way there was no like, this was my house and now you're in my house type of feeling. But when we would go on these trips, there was none of that, right? It was just like they were just siblings with each other without those differentiating factors. And the adventures they had, the chaos they caused on these trips, the memories they made that were just theirs. To this day, they still talk about, remember when we went here? Remember when we went there?
Mm-hmm.
And it truly had the effect of bonding them and bringing them together, because those were memories that only the five of them shared together. And it started to create a new family experience that was just theirs. And I think there was something really magical and special in doing that, that really helped the five of them bond. Because, spoiler alert, to this day, they act like they're regular. I mean, they fight like they're regular siblings. They love like they're regular siblings. And you can't tell them that they're not siblings. And that in itself is amazing, and totally God's grace on the family saying that now. So because now that they're older, they don't have to be together, but they choose to be together. So it shows that in that case, I think that was something big that made a big difference. And I'll let you unpack why that might have worked.
Well, you spoke to it so well. It wasn't tainted, and it was also in a way a challenge. I mean, one of the things that drives me nuts, and you could speak to this, as how many do you call it Iron Man, by the way?
Yeah,
That's
Iron
right?
Man. Yeah,
How
yeah.
many Iron Mans? Because have you done?
I think 21 now or something like that.
21. Holy shit. You know what's so really funny? So we lived in Lake Placid, and is that still the second hardest one though?
Yes, they still have that big race. Yeah.
So my wife and I would like be sitting on the sidelines, like drinking beer and eating chips as like people would go by. Right, they would run right by. We were on River Road, which is where the ski jumps are. Did you do Lake Placid?
I haven't yet. I haven't yet.
Oh,
It's
you
on
got to
my
do it.
list.
It's in
Yeah.
like so. Okay, so first off, which not that you're intimidated by much, but the freaking bike part. What is it? 112 miles,
Uh-huh.
right? So just so people don't know, an Ironman in Lake Placid, anyway, you swim across Mirror Lake 3.5 or
Yeah, 2.4 miles.
2.4 miles. Let's call it 3.5. Anyway, 2.4, 2.4 miles, and then a full marathon, and then 112, right?
Yeah, 112.
On a
Uh-huh.
bike.
On a
Well,
bike.
the section that you do the bike on is called the notch. And
Oh,
let's just
goodness.
say anything that's called the notch
Yeah.
is
Doesn't
not
sound
good.
good.
And so when our oldest was born on April 28th, and we drove through the notch to get to the hospital that was an hour and 15 minutes away, which is right on the border of Canada, it was snowing in the
Oh,
notch.
wow.
Yeah. so so
Wow.
so anyway, but I'm not scaring you because you're not intimidated by anything, and you're amazing, and you always challenge me. But one of the things that's I'm coming back to your vacation example is that I say this all the time, which is why I am a huge fan of building a culture where we ask our kids to do hard, we ask our kids to level up. And if you think back to, so many different cultures, the quinceañera in Latina cultures, on some level, you can argue bar mitzvah, but think back, ancestral kind of cultures, where you had to go out and literally go and kill a buffalo. You were going and doing these things, these transitions and rituals were so helpful for children to mark the passing of, right, from teenage land, teenagehood to manhood or womanhood. And that's really gone. And I'm not going to get too deep into, oh my God, the phones and how we are lazily, right, exporting parenting onto Instagram and or TikTok. But on some level, those vacations became a healthy bonding, a healthy ritual, a healthy place, like you said, where this wasn't localized to so and so's house or so and so's reference points. This was new, and it was everyone had as much equanimity in that in kind of co-authoring that process. And so I think that that's super, super, super important. What were the things that you and your husband struggled with in terms of, parenting? Because one of the first podcasts very early on, it's called "Are You a Fried Chicken or Pot Roast?" And while my wife and I have not stepped up to the challenge to the degree that you and your husband have, which again, kudos to you and any parent out here who's navigating a blended family and managing those unwritten rules. But my wife and I have very different perspectives, and we've had to nation build in a way. We've had to build our own co-authored norms, co-authored parental philosophy that we still sometimes struggle with. I am fried chicken. She is pot roast. I am more the heavy. She is more the soft. And there's strengths and value in both. And so what were the kind of process that you two went through, not only just like you said, everything the kids went through, which is a lot, but what was the process that you two went to, and how did you kind of figure out what is us, and how
Yeah.
do we do this delicate dance?
Yeah. I will say, I mean, that's a whole nother marriage topic and
Right.
a whole nother episode. But as far as in relation to the kids, I think we were both really good about trying to treat all the kids equally, right? Like not treating one, say they were mine, any special treatment, treating them any special treatment. The other thing too was not to second guess each other's authority in front of each other. So, yeah, there were times that I might have thought my husband was too hard, especially on my boys, but I would never in the moment you kind of go coddle the boys and whatever. Maybe after in private, I would talk to them about I didn't think that was handled correctly or whatever. And yeah, I mean, at times that was a source of conflict because he had a different parenting style than even their dad, and maybe that I was completely comfortable with. But it's funny now looking back, my boys reference that they're so grateful that he was
Hmm.
the way he was. And that he helps make them men, is what they say. And so I have no leg to stand on now when when I say anything, because they're like, we would have been total wimps had it not been for Jason. And I think it he really helped prepare them for the real world and not being soft, because they are going to face bullying. They are going to face things at school that were tough. And I think because they were able to experience a little bit more harder parenting, it helped them. It helped them. There's still times where I think maybe it was a little too much, but
Mhm. Mhm.
I have to go off of what my boys say. And there's no resentment. There's no they don't have any remorse, and they now look back. My boys are now 19 and 22, and there's nothing negative they would say. So uh, what can I argue with, right? I mean, they approve of it.
Well, but there's so many skills that you just mentioned, and I've gotten into, a lot of those topics, how to avoid splitting, things of that nature, and that idea of flowing trust and space at times to your co-partner and co-parent, even if it is a little different or rough or gruff, or it could feel, for his perspective, he may have felt you were coddling or over accommodating or whatever that is, to not basically step in and, as you said, weaken someone publicly, and then to have those conversations offline and really be able to share, being vulnerable and say, hey, when you did this or that, I felt this way. It'd mean a lot to me if you could just consider, a little bit of a different tact and tone. That's the magic of parenting, right? Is that each one teach one, and the secret sauce is in the blend of the two. And I like that you allowed, and I'm sure, trust me, there's so many things I wish I could take back that I've said or done as a parent. And globally, you allowed him to be him, and globally, he allowed you to be you, it sounds like, in terms of how you wanted to be a mom. And then that did ask yet again another wrinkle of cognitive flexibility, emotional kind of plasticity and agility in your kids. And while it doesn't mean he was right, it just means that wrinkle now in retrospect they view as a building block of their right resiliency and who they are and their identity.
Right, right. No, I think the same goes to how they interacted with each other, and now the older kids. I mean, it kind of allowing it to fall into what it would have been like had you had five kids in this age range. There was going to be some of the jesting and some of the picking, and as long as it wasn't anything that was, out of control, but within that normal of, if that was really his sibling, would he probably kind of act like that? Yeah, he probably would, right? And not see it different because it was coming from a stepbrother than if it was
Hmm.
coming from the old brother. Like trying to really step back and see that's within the normal realm, and that's kind of what helped them fall into place and get over what I was talking about, that birth order switch, and start to accept it. And just really praying for a lot of wisdom during all that. But like you said, not stepping in and realizing that in the end, they can use this to grow and to be stronger. And it's exactly what happened.
Cool. I think this is a great place to pause, and Joy is going to stick around for part two, which I'm so psyched about. But before we part, Joy, please shout out how anyone can connect with you, whether they are a doctor who is feeling like they lost their practice and wants to take their practice back and has been considering or contemplating concierge meds, or whether it is a professional who's really interested in learning more about your health training camps and how they can also get to their next level.
Sure. So one of the best places to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You can go find me at Joy McAdams. And then on Instagram is where I have a lot of fun and show that sports side of what I offer. And that's J McAdams and the number 5. So you can go find me on those two places.
Cool. Well, for anyone else who's listening, please stick around for part two as we continue to dive into the unwritten laws and rules of becoming a blended family and how we can continue to do that in the most effective fashion. So, whether you are in the midst of this, whether you're an OG, as Joy is, having done this, or whether you're about to brace for impact, so to speak, please stick around for the second part as we're going to get really more technical and tactical about some do's and don'ts. So everyone have an awesome day, and can't wait to see you in the next episode. Be well. Hey everyone, Thomas here. first off, it means the world to me that you took the time to listen to my podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you want to receive the latest podcast updates, as well as expert parenting tips and practical strategies for navigating your tween, teen, or young adults challenges directly to your inbox, then sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. And most importantly, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, stuck, stressed, and are losing sleep because you're constantly worried about your tween, teen, or young adult, your first step is to realize that you still have a choice and can do something about it. I'm ready to help you take action and create the results you desire today. Just go to fourpeaksparents.com and book a free strategy call. Let's do this. Last thing, while you were listening to this show, who was the one person that you thought could really benefit from hearing it? Please share it with them.